So let's just call it what it is. You are sacrificing your health for systems and employers that will replace you in a week if you drop dead. That's not cynical, that's reality. And I'm not saying that to make you bitter. I'm saying that so that you can wake up. Because your body is paying the price for loyalty that is not being reciprocated. This is Hustle Rebels, a podcast for people who know how to grind, but are starting to question the cost. I'm Renee, and here we talk about success, burnout, and nervous system regulation without glorifying exhaustion or sacrificing your health, relationships, or your sense of self, and without pretending ambition is the problem. Let's get into it. You don't burn out because you're weak. You burn out because your body has been trying to get your attention, and you've been trained to ignore it. At some point, it stops asking. And I learned that the hard way, but I started this podcast and my business, Wayward Wellness Coaching, so that you don't have to learn it the hard way. Welcome back to Hustle Rebels. I'm Renee, the founder of Wayward Wellness Coaching, and this podcast is for people who know how to grind, but are starting to question the cost. And today, we're going to be talking about something that high achievers and high performers don't want to admit. Your body is keeping score, whether you acknowledge it or not. And by the end of this episode, you're going to understand what's actually happening inside of your body when you're constantly stressed and pushing through. Why you can feel exhausted even though you're doing everything right, and what you can start doing right now to stop running yourself into the ground before your body forces you to. And if you've been pushing through stress, burnout, and exhaustion, this episode is going to hit. So I recommend that you subscribe now, share it with a friend, because in these conversations where we ask the hard questions that society doesn't normally talk about, it's where growth and change happens. And that's what we're striving for. So next week, I'm going to have a guest on here, Wade Simmons. He is a filmmaker, a funeral service worker, and a former pro wrestler trainee who developed a vocal disorder called spasmodic dysphonia that he ultimately found out was directly related to the stress that he had encountered. But before I drop my conversation with Wade next week, I want to give you some context. Because what we talk about in that episode isn't just mindset. It's not just manage your stress better. It's what actually happens to your body when you don't do those things. Because here's the truth that most people don't say out loud. You can override your body, but you can't outrun the consequences. So let's strip this down. When you're constantly stressed, overworked, and pushing through, your body is in a constant chronic stress response. This is running on autopilot behind the scenes without you really even realizing it. And if we're being honest, you might already be feeling the effects of this. You're just blaming it on other things. So you could be telling yourself something like, I just didn't sleep well. It's probably my diet. I'm just getting older and it's been a busy week. Meanwhile, your body's been under pressure for months, perhaps maybe even years. What that translates into in your body is elevated cortisol, which is your stress hormone, increased heart rate and blood pressure, suppressed immune response, disrupted sleep cycles, digestive issues, hormonal imbalances, and things like this isn't dramatic. This is actually documented. And long term, this turns into things like burnout, anxiety, chronic fatigue, increased risk of heart disease, autoimmune issues, even things like cognitive decline. So when people say things like, I'm just tired, no, your system is actually dysregulated. And here's where it actually gets even more dangerous. You'll finally go to the doctor and you'll explain your symptoms. You'll say you're exhausted, you can't sleep, your body feels off, your energy is shot, and more often than not, you will walk out with a prescription in your hand or online in the ethers, because that's where we are in 2026. Something to help you sleep, something to take the edge off, or something to manage the symptoms. And listen, I am not anti-medication. I understand there's a time and place, but let's not pretend that it fixes the root of many of these issues, because the stress is still there. The environment is still the same. The patterns haven't changed. So now you're not just burnt out, you're mismanaging the burnout. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, is this actually a health issue? Or is this the cost of how I've been living? And this is how it plays out in real life. You've got someone, say a top executive in their company. They work out, they eat clean, looks like they have it all together. On paper, they're considered healthy, but they've had high blood pressure for years. So what happens? They go to the doctor. They're put on medication. Their numbers come down, and everyone just moves on, and it's managed. But nothing actually has changed. The stress is still there, the pressure is still there, and the lifestyle is still there. So now it looks like it's managed, but underneath, the system is still under stress. And I have seen this firsthand as a paramedic. Someone collapses at the gym, a heart attack, a stroke, and everyone is shocked. But they look so healthy. They work out all the time. They ate better than everyone that I know. And I'm going to call out the illusion because, yeah, physically, maybe, but physiologically, they were running on stress for years, maybe decades. You can't out-train chronic stress. You can't out-eat it either. And you definitely can't out-supplement it. Trust me, I can go on a rant with that. If the pressure never comes off the system eventually breaks. And that's the part that nobody looks at. Because it's easier to just track your workouts than it is to look at the environment that you're tolerating every single day. The body doesn't care how healthy you look on the outside. It responds to what it has been carrying on the inside. And here's where most conversations end up falling short. People think that burnout is about working too much or needing time off, better time management. But that's honestly just the surface level stuff. Because if that were true, then why would people that have jobs that aren't physically demanding or not even working crazy hours and they still feel completely drained, exhausted, and burned out by the end of the day or by the end of the week? And on the flip side, why do you have someone that's a wife or a mother who might not even be in a traditional high-stress career, but she's constantly feeling underappreciated, has lost her voice in the family dynamic, and is carrying the weight of everything at home and still feeling just as burnt out? That's because burnout isn't just about output. It's about disconnection. And this actually ties back to something I talked about in a previous episode, Karl Marx's alienation theory. I can put the link in that episode in the show notes as well, so you can go back. It was actually a really good episode, so I highly recommend that you check it out. And before you tune that out, thinking that it's too academic or Karl Marx associated with communism, I get it. You could take an ideology and separate it from it as well. But stay with me. At its core, it's simple. The more disconnected you are from yourself, your voice, your needs, and your identity, the more strain your system carries. And that's what burnout is often rooted in. Chronic self-abandonment, suppressing your own voice, overextending to meet expectations of someone else, shrinking yourself to fit an environment that doesn't actually fit you. And your body actually feels all of that. So every time that you don't speak up, or you say yes when you mean no, or tolerate something that doesn't quite sit right with you, that is stress to your body and to your nervous system. Not emotional stress, physiological stress. You don't burn out just by doing too much or by overworking. You burn out by being too far removed from yourself while you are doing it. So let's just call it what it is, bringing it into the workplace. You are sacrificing your health for systems and employers that will replace you in a week if you drop dead. That's not cynical, that's reality. And I'm not saying that to make you bitter. I'm saying that so that you can wake up, because your body is paying the price for a loyalty that is not being reciprocated. And if you think this is just theory, let me give you a real example of how disconnected this gets, because I have lived it personally. There was a point where I ended up septic and I needed emergency surgery. It came out of the blue at my healthiest point in my life, what I considered at the time my healthiest point in my life. And I was on the operation table for close to 8 hours. And when I woke up, still coming off of anesthesia and heavily on some medications, my first thought was not, am I okay? Or what just happened to my body? What is going on? My first thought, before the surgeon came back in to tell me what had happened, was I need to tell my chief, because I was supposed to work my shift that next day. Let that sink in for a second. That is heavy conditioning. And his response was not, are you okay? It was not, what do you need? Or just worry about healing right now. It was, how are you going to manage your sick time? And right after that, I got a message from the union president saying, why is the chief messaging us about a sick bank for you? My boyfriend wanted to chuck my phone outside of the hospital window when he said, why are you caring about these people that couldn't give two shits about whether I had died on that table or not? And that's a system that claims brotherhood. So I can only imagine a corporate setting. But that's the system. It's not evil. It's not personal. It's just operational. You become a logistical problem to solve, a shift to cover, a body to replace, a schedule to rearrange. And here's the part that you need to hear. I was literally coming out of surgery, and my nervous system was still wired to prioritize my job over my own survival. That is not dedication. That is conditioning. That's what burnout really looks like. It's not just being tired. It is being so disconnected from yourself, from your needs, that even in a moment of crisis where your body is screaming, you're still thinking about how not to inconvenience someone else. And this is why boundaries matter. This is why taking time off matters. This is why speaking up for yourself matters. Because if you don't consciously interrupt that pattern, your body will eventually do it for you, like it did to me. And it won't ask nicely. Trust me, I learned that the hard way. But you don't need to. People hear nervous system regulation and they think breath work, meditation, yoga, calming down. And that is part of it. Those are some tools that you can have in your toolbox. They do work. But real regulation looks like taking your vacation days that you have been given without guilt, using your sick time when your body needs it, emotionally, mentally, physically, when your body needs it, shutting off when you leave work, setting boundaries that people just might not like, not shrinking yourself to keep the peace. Because regulation isn't just about calming the body. It's removing what's dysregulating it. Because you cannot live in a state of calm and peace if you do not remove what is dysregulating it chronically. So here are 5 practical steps that you can start doing right now to help mitigate the burnout. 1, take your damn time off. If you've earned it, use it. You don't get bonus points for burning out quietly. You also don't get bonus points for not taking your time off. And you also, usually, can't roll anything over into the next year, so take it. That's why it's there. 2, create a hard off switch. When you leave work, leave. No emails. No, just one more thing. Your nervous system needs that contrast. It needs an on-off switch. 3, stop overriding your internal cues. If something feels off, it probably is. That tension in your chest, that knot in your stomach, that's not random. And if you want to learn more about listening to those inner cues, I have a Burn the Blueprint Masterclass video training that's really a crash course on that. And I'll drop the link in the show notes as well. 4, set one boundary this week, not 10, 1. Something small. Saying no, because no is a complete sentence. You don't need an explanation after it. Speaking up, not over-explaining yourself. Watch what happens inside of your body when you hold that boundary for yourself. And lastly, 5, check where you might be shrinking yourself. Where are you making yourself smaller to fit? That's one of the fastest ways to stay in a stress loop. So let's bring this full circle. What we talked about today isn't just burnout as a buzzword. It's what's happening inside of your body when you keep pushing through stress, ignoring your internal cues, stay in environments that don't fit you, and overriding yourself long enough where it just becomes the norm for you. We also talked about things like your body shifting into chronic stress response and how that just doesn't feel like being tired, but it actually shows up as real physical symptoms. We talked about how easy it is to mislabel it, to blame it on things like sleep, diet, and age, or how you probably could just walk away with a prescription that manages the symptoms without actually addressing what's actually causing it. And we also talked about how you can look healthy on the outside, working out, eating well, but still running your body into the ground underneath it all. And finally, we talked about what burnout actually is at its core. Not just doing too much, not just overworking, but being disconnected from yourself while you are doing it. And if you take nothing else from this episode, take this. You don't burn out because you're weak. You burn out because you've been trained to override yourself and your voice and your desires and your needs for far too long. And this is exactly why I wanted to bring Wade on for next week. Because we're not just talking about burnout as a concept. We're talking about what actually happens when your body has just had enough, and what it looks like when you're forced to confront it. So if any part of this episode hits, don't brush it off, because your body's probably trying to tell you something if you haven't learned. Listen to the next episode when Wade comes on as a guest, because it's going to connect a lot of dots. If this episode resonated with you, make sure you're subscribed to Hustle Rebels so you don't miss what's coming next. Also, share this with a friend who also might be struggling with burnout, and also consider supporting the show so that it can stay independent and we can continue having these conversations like this, asking the hard questions that society tends to shy away from. And if you're realizing that you've been running on autopilot for way too long, I break this down deeper inside my Burn the Blueprint Masterclass. Or if you want to learn more about brain spotting, which I'm a brain spotting practitioner and can help release some identities, conditionings, and beliefs that cause a lot of this burnout, please reach out to me and I can provide more information for you. The link is going to be in the show notes for everything that I have talked about. And if you want any more information, do not hesitate to reach out. I will see you guys next week.